So there's one thing Patrick Mahomes said yesterday that I don't think enough people are talking about. It wasn't about his knee. It wasn't about training camp. Hell, it wasn't even about this upcoming season. It was just one sentence that completely changed the way I look at this Chiefs offense. Because if Patrick Mahomes actually meant what he said, the rest of the NFL should be very, very nervous. So yesterday was the first day of Chiefs training camp for quarterbacks and rookies. And sure, there were a few headlines here and there. Andy met with the media. Patrick met with the media. There were questions about injuries, expectations. There were questions about this football team and where they're going this year. But after listening to both press conferences, I honestly think that almost everybody missed the biggest story. Because I don't think today was really about Patrick Mahomes being healthy. I think today was about Patrick Mahomes admitting that he wants to become a different quarterback overall. And if that's true, it could completely change the identity of this offense. When Andy Reid stepped to the podium yesterday, the first thing Chiefs fans wanted to hear was simple: how's Patrick? And the answer was exactly what everybody had hoped for. Patrick Mahomes has been fully cleared to participate in training camp. No major setbacks, no lingering concerns that would keep him off the practice field. That's obviously fantastic news, but honestly, that wasn't the part of the press conferences that caught my attention. It was what Patrick Mahomes said after that. Because he wasn't talking like someone who's just relieved to be back. He sounded like someone who had spent the last several months studying himself, studying his own game, studying that injury, studying what he wants to become moving forward. And then he said something that I think could define the entire season. Mahomes talked about wanting to play more from the pocket, getting the football out quicker, not putting himself in unnecessary situations where he has to take off and run. Now, on the surface, that's obvious, and it doesn't seem all that groundbreaking now, does it? We've all been talking about it. Of course, every quarterback wants to get the ball out quicker, but I actually think there's something much deeper happening here. Because think about the version of Patrick Mahomes we've watched over the last several years. How many times has this offense needed him to be Superman? Third and long. Everybody covered. Mahomes escapes. Pocket collapses. Mahomes creates something out of absolutely nothing. Game on the line. Mahomes puts the cape on. We've started expecting him to make the impossible plays his routine. But what if that's no longer the goal here? What if Patrick Mahomes isn't trying to become the quarterback he was 2 years ago? What if he's trying to become something even better? Because that's exactly what I heard today. Not a quarterback trying to prove he can still make highlight plays. We all know he can. A quarterback trying to be more efficient, more disciplined, more dangerous, and honestly, that's freaking terrifying. Because history tells us something here. The greatest quarterbacks don't stay great because they refuse to change. They stay great because they're willing to keep evolving. Tom Brady evolved, Peyton Manning evolved, Drew Brees evolved. Every one of those guys eventually learned that winning wasn't about making harder plays, it was about making smarter ones. Now it sounds like Patrick Mahomes is entering that stage of his career. Pat entered the chat, and here's the crazy part. He's saying this while he's still in his prime. Real quick, if you're enjoying this breakdown and you appreciate the research that me and Mike put into videos like this, do us a huge favor and hit that like button. Let's see if Chiefs Kingdom can get this one to 600 likes. Also, hit that hype button. Let's see if we can get that over 25,000 today. Every like, hype, comment, and everything else you guys do help this channel grow, and we appreciate every single one of you. Now back to the show. This is where I think today's press conference became really interesting, because Patrick Mahomes didn't just tell us how he wants to play, he also gave us a clue as to why he thinks he can play that way. There was a moment where he joked that instead of taking off and running himself, he could just hand the ball off to K9.
I'm going to obviously try to take care of myself a little bit better than I did last season. I think I ran a little bit too much last season in general, so I'll try to be better with that. And then if all else fails, just give it to K9 and let him just go out there and work.
Everybody laughed about it. It was a funny line, but I don't think it was a joke. I actually think it was a glimpse into what this offense wants to become. Think about it a little bit. For years, when things broke down, Patrick Mahomes became the running game. How many huge first downs has he picked up with his legs? How many times has he absorbed a hit because there simply wasn't another option there? He did it because the team needed him to, and he's just like that. But what if they don't need that anymore? What if adding Kenneth Walker isn't about improving the running back room? What if it's about protecting Patrick Mahomes? What if every time Mahomes reaches that moment where he used to think, we've got to make this play all by myself, he now has another answer in the backfield? He can just hand the ball off to K9. Let him go get the tough yards. Let him punish the defenses. Let him absorb some of those hits instead of Patrick Mahomes. Suddenly, Mahomes isn't carrying the offense with his legs. He's directing it with his arm. And that's a huge difference, because every carry Kenneth Walker takes is one less unnecessary hit on Patrick Mahomes. Every successful run forces the defense to hesitate. Linebackers have to respect it. Safeties have to creep forward, and play action becomes more dangerous. The pocket gets cleaner, and that version of Patrick Mahomes might be more difficult to defend than the one who's constantly improvising outside of the pocket. Which brings me to something that Andy Reid said yesterday, and I don't think enough people are connecting all of this. He sounded like a coach who believes this offense finally has all of its pieces back.
Yeah, I'm optimistic.
Now, that last comment from Andy Reid is one that I can't stop thinking about, because he never came out and said, this offense is going to look completely different. That's not Andy Reid. We know this. He rarely gives you the headline. He just gives you little pieces here and there, and it's our job to try to put them together for you. When I listened to him yesterday, I didn't hear a coach who was wondering if the offense could work. I heard a coach who sounded like he finally had all the pieces in place that he wants. And I think that's a huge distinction to make. Think about everything this offense dealt with over the last couple of years. Young receivers learning on the fly, injuries, players missing time, Patrick Mahomes having to create when structure broke down. There were stretches where it honestly felt like the offense depended more on Mahomes making something extraordinary just to stay on schedule. But yesterday, I didn't hear anybody talking like that's the plan anymore. And maybe that's because it isn't finally. When Patrick Mahomes talked about playing faster, staying in the pocket, and simply handing the football to Kenneth Walker instead of taking unnecessary hits himself, I don't think he was lowering his expectations. I think he was actually raising them. Because what he's really saying is, trust the people around me. That's a big deal. Because if Kenneth Walker gives you an explosive running game, Patrick Mahomes doesn't have to be your leading rusher on critical downs. If Rashee Rice is healthy and picks up where he left off and can stay out of trouble, Mahomes has a receiver he already trusts in the middle of the field. If Xavier Worthy takes that year 3 jump that this organization clearly believes is coming, defenses have to account for his speed every single snap. Now throw Tyquan Thornton into the mix. Throw Jalen Royals into the competition. Throw Cyrus Allen into it. Nobody's saying these guys have to become stars overnight, but every legitimate weapon added, every receiver that earns Patrick Mahomes' trust, every explosive run by Kenneth Walker creates a little more stress on opposing defenses, and it takes just a little more pressure off of Patrick Mahomes. And that's what I think yesterday's press conference was really all about. Not one player, not one injury update, not one quote or philosophy, a quarterback who understands he doesn't have to win every snap by himself anymore. And honestly, that should scare the rest of the NFL, because we've all seen Patrick Mahomes' Superman. We've seen the impossible sidearm throws. We've seen the 30-yard scrambles. We've seen him escape pressure that should have ended the play 3 different freaking times. But what if the next evolution of Patrick Mahomes isn't more spectacular? It's just more efficient. Think about how frustrating that could be for defenses. Instead of waiting for him to make a mistake, he's taking the easy completion. Instead of forcing something, he's checking it down to someone like Kenneth Walker. Instead of running into contact, he's handing the ball off to his running back for once and letting him do the dirty work. That's championship football. And here's something I don't think that gets talked about enough either.
Shout out Prize Picks for sponsoring today's episode. Today we're making an entry on some MLB games. We're going to take Tommy Edman, 4-hitter fantasy score. We're going to go more on this one. We're also going to take Zach Wheeler of the Philadelphia Phillies versus the Dodgers, 4.5 strikeouts. We're going to go more on that one. Then we're going to take Kansas City outfielder Lane Thomas versus the Giants, 5-hitter fantasy score. We're going more. Let's go ahead and lock that in. Remember, Prize Picks is America's #1 sports pick app. You can follow along with us all season at All Chiefed Up, tell our picks. And right now there's a new user offer. Play your first $5 and get $150 in lineups. If you win, just use code HMA when you sign up. You can find the link in the description.
The older great quarterbacks got, the less football they actually played outside of the structure of the offense. Tom Brady wasn't trying to make every freaking highlight. Peyton Manning wasn't looking to truck linebackers, and Drew Brees, he wasn't taking unnecessary hits either. They learned that the fastest way to win football games was making the right decision over and over again. Patrick Mahomes is only 30 years old, and he's already talking like a quarterback who's got that figured out. He's not talking about protecting himself because he's afraid. He's talking about protecting himself because he wants to be there in January. Because the goal isn't to win training camp. The goal isn't to win September. The goal is to be the healthiest, smartest, most complete version of Patrick Mahomes when the games actually decide championships. And that's the mentality Patrick Mahomes is bringing into this season. I honestly think Chiefs fans should be super excited about that. Not because he's changing who he is, because he's adding another layer to his game. Maybe that's the biggest takeaway from day one. Patrick Mahomes isn't trying to become the quarterback that he used to be. He's trying to become the quarterback this team needs right now. One who trusts his running game, one who trusts these young receivers that need confidence, one who doesn't feel like every third down has to end with him performing a freaking miracle. Because you've got Kenneth Walker in the backfield, Rashee Rice back healthy, Xavier Worthy continuing to develop, and young receivers fighting to earn roles behind those guys. You don't need one player carrying the entire offense. You need one player conducting it. And I honestly think that's the word I'd use after listening to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid yesterday. Conductor. Not superhero anymore. Conductor. If Patrick Mahomes is truly willing to take the simple completion, hand the ball to Kenneth Walker, trust the talent that he has around him, and let this offense function the way that Andy kind of envisions it for this year, then the rest of the league might be looking at the most balanced Chiefs offense we've seen in years. And maybe that's the warning Patrick Mahomes sent out yesterday. Not that he's healthy, not that he's back, but that the version of Patrick Mahomes everyone has spent years trying to stop, it's still actually evolving. And the scariest version of Patrick Mahomes might just be the one who doesn't have to be Superman anymore. If you enjoyed the video, hit that subscribe button. If you want to see a couple of under the radar players I think could completely change the ceiling of this football team this season, click on this video right here and we'll catch you over there.